Okay. So the first thing I'm going to show is, everybody's talking about Christmas in July right now. And so, boy, that's kind of true. You want to, if you're going to be making anything, you need to start making it.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing is, we need to practice our craft. We're only going to get good at quilting, binding, the more we practice. So great way to practice is by making pot holders,
Yeah.
because you can practice your quilting with your walking foot. You can use the specialty stitches from your on your machine. This is just one of the stitches from my own machine. This is the front. If you know me, you know I love pom poms and I love rickrack.
Mm-hmm.
So and these are just two different ways, to do binding. I curved this, but I should have curved it a little bit more, and I wouldn't have had to put like a little pleat in the corners.
Pleats are cute though.
It's cute.
Mm-hmm.
The way you curve is if you have a saucer in your house, a plate in your house, a can of green beans,
Mm-hmm.
anything that's a circle, you can just do it. This one, I just, I made them so one I could use pom poms.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a little pocket. This is new fabric. Let's see. Can you see this one? Um,
You can a little bit.
you can a little bit. The put that there. So this is some new Christmas fabric that we got from Paintbrush Studios, and I just love it. I love the colors
They're
of
all
it.
so
But
cute.
it would be great for hostess gifts.
Yeah.
It'd be great for your own kitchen. It doesn't have to be Christmas related,
Mm-hmm.
but you just get out there and you play.
Mm-hmm.
Play with your machine on stitching, and then great way to practice your bindings. So to make the pot holders, sorry, I had to lose my thought there. So inside each of my pot holders is some Insulbright. So you do one layer of Insulbright, and then you also do one layer of 100% cotton batting. And I know each of us, if you've been quilting any length of time, you have scraps of batting at your house. You're just going to, put a layer of each. I will say I cut my Insulbright just a little bit smaller, so it's just barely in my seam. It didn't go all the way out to the edge,
Okay.
so that it just wouldn't be so thick. But my my pot holder square and my batting goes out to the edge.
And which side do you put the Insulbright on?
The Insulbright, according to the directions, the batting will go towards will be on this side of the Insulbright, and I will tell you, yeah. So I have the Insulbright right here on the front,
Mm-hmm.
and my batting's on the back.
Okay.
If
And
that,
this is the side that you hold your pot with, right?
well, you can. You can't. I mean, it's going to
however.
protect your hand any
No
way you
matter.
use it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't have to put a pocket. I have several, pot holders. We did an exchange of pot holders in the guild a couple of years ago, and it was a lot of fun. And it doesn't have a pocket. So as long as you just have one layer,
Mm-hmm.
on the directions, it says 1 to 2 layers of batting. And I tried the 2 layers of batting with the Insulbright, and it's just so thick that you can't hardly use it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard to get binding on. So yes, so we're going to start binding, and then you can see what all I've done. So we're going to move all that aside for a second. I'm working on my Janome Skyline 7 today, which is my machine
Mm-hmm.
at the moment. And so I've already started, so that because I mainly want to show you how to do the corner, how to join your ends, and then you know what, I forgot to get us some pins. And so how to do the corners, to do your miter, because again, ladies, if you're not really good at your binding, this is the best place to learn,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a pot holder. If you mess it up in the kitchen, guess what? You can just toss it.
Mm-hmm.
You get oil all over it, or you burn it somehow, you toss it, nobody has to know. But again, at Christmas time, if you're going to Christmas parties this year, this would be so cute to do some little towels, some pot holders, and then get some cookie cutters, in the shapes like candy canes or the gingerbread.
Yeah.
One of my friends, when we did Secret Santa, where I used to work, um, I got pot holders, towels, cookie cutters, and a little spatula. And then he put a note in it saying, "Go check the refrigerator."
Mm-hmm.
And so he ended up buying like a roll of cookie dough
Uh-huh.
for that day's secret gift.
Aw.
So there's you an idea from my friend Josh Hall, which I thought was really neat.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to sew, and if you have any questions, pop them in our comments and we'll stop and answer them. So I'm doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm sewing straight ahead. I have my 1/4 inch foot on, and what I'm doing is you're going to stop 1/4 of an inch from the edge. Now you see, if I was teaching you, I'd tell you to put a pin in here so you know when to stop.
Mm-hmm.
But on my foot, there's all these little markings on it, and I will say, look at your feet, not your actual feet, but the feet for your sewing machine. And I'm just going to go to the corner because you may have markings that will help you with your sewing. And I just slow down to get to the end. And when I get to the end, I'm going to do a couple of back stitches just to get away from that. And then, of course, I'm going to cut my thread. Bring the piece out, turn it. We just sewed there, but now we need to sew here. And so let me know if my hand's in the way, Ray. So what we're going to do is go up, making a 45-degree angle. My line is going straight. My fabric has a straight line going all the way up. And now I'm going to just fold this piece down so it matches here and the fold matches there. So it's a perfect square. And you're just going to like kind of straighten everything out. Does that make sense? Do I need to show that one more time, you think, or everybody can rewind? Good. Rewind if you need it. Oh, I am in the chair. It just started sinking. We have a chair that sinks. So I go back in. I start sewing off the edge, not 1/4 of an inch from the edge. You just sew just off. You usually want to save like about a 6-inch gap in here. Some people will say less. I would say at least 6. If I was working on a quilt, I'd probably leave about 10 inches of a gap. And that's just so that I can manipulate the quilt. I'm going to do a back stitch to lock that stitch in real quick and cut that. And the reason why I leave it is because I don't know if my hands are so big or I just need more room to manipulate what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to just move that up there. I am going to show this foot up close. I don't know if I'm in the way or not, but can you see the foot? Mm-hmm. So you can see there's little markings here, and they're 1/4 of an inch apart. So at this one, that's usually where your needle is. Mm-hmm. Not all feet will have your markings, which I wish they did.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Especially if it would be where your needle is from the side. Mm-hmm. But then I also know to go to 1/4 of an inch from the end. When the end of my quilt is right here on this mark, mm-hmm. then I know I can stop. But otherwise, stick a pin in and do it. The other feet that I'm going to be using will be my normal foot, which is going on next for just a little bit. I use my zipper foot for my pom-poms so that I could get in there. Okay, my zipper foot. Because remember, you can move your needle whichever way you want, mm-hmm. and there's nothing to do it, to get in the way of your stuff. Mm-hmm. To sew the binding down, I use a edger or joiner foot, is what they're usually called. But it's a foot, and you might have it in your collection of feet, where it has like the little flange right down the middle of the foot. And the reason why I use it is so that when I'm stitching, I can do the fold right against this edge, and I'm going to top stitch evenly, or I hope to top stitch evenly.
Right.
Because I can mess it up. Mm-hmm. The machine knows what it's doing. It's the operator most of the time doesn't know what she's doing. So I'm going to leave that out for right now. Go back to my quilt top. So I have this opening. I'm going to fold my 2 pieces, and you see I've got my binding just kind of pulled back because I want to kind of find the middle of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to just stick a pin in it to mark the middle. So then lay that flat. So then what's going to happen is I'm going to fold, oops, I might have to move it a little bit more. So I'm going to fold my pieces and I'm going to pin them down. And there's a ton of ways to do this. I just saw a different way on Instagram, but I just haven't tried it yet. So
Mm-hmm.
I just do the method that I know is tried and true. If you're a beginner sewer and took a class, like the first class I ever took, they had it to where you folded your edge under at a 45-degree angle.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you came back around, you just laid your next, your other piece in it and sew it down. Well, this is what can happen. So, sometimes you don't catch all the edges.
Right.
But I am going to go back in and just hand sew this. Okay. So this would be something a beginner would do. And ladies, if you're a beginner, you can do this, what I'm showing you, which ends up being a prettier binding connection.
Mm-hmm.
So I folded this back on itself to the middle. And on this one, usually you fold again to the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to leave an eighth of an inch gap in between.
Okay.
Because it just ends up being nicer. It's because your binding stretches just a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and if you don't, you'll end up with a pleat.
Yeah.
And
so
you
it'll
still
sort of flatten out to meet itself.
it'll flatten out. You still may end up with a little pleat, but it's on the inside, not on the outside. So you'll never know. So I'm gonna cut off a piece of my little binding because it's going to become kind of a ruler for me. So remember, this is a piece of my binding. It was folded wrong sides together. There's the edge. There's my fold. I'm going to lay my fold to fold, and I'm going to just mark it. And yes, I'm using just regular pencil. At home, sometimes I use a Sharpie, an ultra sharp Sharpie, because you can see I was marking it's outside the fabric. So when I cut this, I want to cut the line off so that it's the correct size.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
And you were marking not on that piece that you cut, but what
right.
was
What's left.
right.
And usually if this is long enough, I just flip it because I save these little bits and pieces. Like if you have enough, you could sew them together and create you a colorful binding. But I use them for starters and enders when I'm sewing. So yes. So, and I might need the other scissors because apparently I think these are going to be too dull. There, thank you. So I'm just cutting, you can see I'm just cutting the line off. And I'm cutting as straight as I can. Okay?
All right.
And now flip it back towards me. This is going to be the hardest part, I promise. Change that. Put my foot on so you can see. Okay, so we're still here for a second. So
and which foot did you just put on?
I just put on your normal sewing foot because I'm going to sew from corner to corner like you normally do for sewing, connecting your binding pieces together. I'm going to do that here. So on this piece, and if you don't have enough room, you can rip some of these stitches out. But I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that it is big enough. So I lay this piece out flat. And then on this one, this corner here goes up to this corner. And ladies, gentlemen, let me just tell you, you'll get used to it, but you'll, if you have to, you can stick a pin in it at a diagonal because I'm going to be sewing from this corner down to the other corner. There. Okay. So if you want to, you could test it out by putting your pins at an angle. It's not exactly right because again my pins aren't going to the corner, but you know it's right before you sew it. But somehow sometimes you'll get one of these twisted and it'll be twisted. It's okay, you just rip out the stitches and try again. No harm. There's no, what is it, there's no crying and sewing until you've done ripped something out 4 times. So again, I'm back to my machine. I've put on just my regular sewing foot because I'm going to sew from corner to corner on my piece. I don't have it marked. You could mark this at a 45-degree angle, but I don't do that. I have my which you can't see anymore. Apparently, it's on my table at home. So usually I have diagonal seam tape, which yes, we got some more back in stock.
Yes.
It's by Hemline, and it's a navy blue purpley color. So if you're a purple person, you should come in and get it. So I'm going to start at the point and do the best that I can to keep it up there. And again, this is, you're going to see where your needle comes down. I will say sitting this low, it helps you see where the needle is. So I'm going to get started. And like I said, you're going to start sewing. And if you can just basically get yourself to the, the midpoint here, you're just aiming towards it. Sorry, I'm trying to get everything flat for you. And take that one pin out so I don't sew to it. So I'm going to just sew right to the middle, right here. I'm trying to make sure I don't get the quilt in there. Okay. And stop. And then I'm going to take this pin out because I don't want to sew over it. And then I'm going to make sure the bottom is lining up to the side, which it's not. So we're going to stop right here and find me a seam ripper, which should be in that pin cushion too. Because this is what's happening. See, it got off and it got folded. So see, things happen and you just saw it. I'm going to just take it out. Let's hope I don't rip the fabric. There. Okay, any questions? Am I confusing anybody? So at least, hey, now you can see me do this again. Take all your little strings out. Don't wait to do it afterwards because those little fuzzies get stuck into your stitches. Oh, yeah. And while you're trying to get it out, you may rip one of your stitches. Okay. Going back. And so I'm going to pin this how I normally do, which is kind of making sure this side is staying. And I'm hoping that I'm not confusing anybody by not putting the pins at the diagonal again. But what you're seeing now is how I would do it at home, because I want, this corner to match up to here. Sorry, I'm going to move my thumb out of the way in a second. So I always want this to match up and I want these sides to match up. So if that helps you. So I should have unpinned those pins on the diagonal and moved them. There. And then, like I said, usually you have more room. That's the only bad thing about doing a pot holder, unless you do a big pot holder. And again, that's up to you. You could even use these as maybe some trivets. Yeah. That might be the time that you would put more Insulbrite or batting in it so that it doesn't burn your table. Okay, so we're going again. Oops. We think we're going again. I am going to start that there. No, I'm not starting that there. I took it out there. So look, this is like live TV. You never know what you're going to get. There. Okay. I'm sewing to the halfway point. Check and make sure I don't have any pleats. And then I'm making sure that my, point right here on the bottom is lining up. Like if my seam tape, normally comes all the way out. But you can see my piece right there, so I'm lining it up on the middle. And as I get closer, I'm going to take that pin out and just keep sewing. Cut my thread. take this pin out. And so you can see it's back.
Fold in there.
So you're going to take this piece, trim that little piece out. Make sure you cut the right side of that off.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I have cut the wrong side. And then I like to press this seam open.
Sorry. Which seam?
Oops. I like to press the seam kind of open
Mm-hmm.
and then fold it back down. And normally I would have the iron on, but I didn't think about it. But I would iron this down before I do it. So we're going to go back to my 1/4-inch seam. And your 1/4-inch seam, even if your machine says that it has a patchwork button seam sewing, verify it. I'm just looking for my 1/4-inch foot. Verify that it is truly a 1/4-inch. Because mine I have to move over just a little bit. Thank you. I'm looking for that foot. So I'm using 1/4-inch foot, a regular foot, and then I'm going to use my edger joiner foot. And so now we just finished sewing. And I'm going to kind of just straighten this up because you see it kind of got, it's not straight, which, it's in the seam so nobody's going to know. But this way it'll fold nicer back onto itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm letting the machine, I'm not pushing it pushing
Mm-hmm.
my fabric, because the feed dogs, they do all the work. And remember I told you there's a pleat always shows up. I don't know if you can see it.
It's a little baby
pleat.
pleat.
It's a baby pleat,
Mm-hmm.
but it won't be on the outside. Take your strings out while you can. So yes, a little bit of a bump, but you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So on this one, I go around, press my seams. See, look, there's where I messed up with something. And I just kind of press it out. Then, this is what this one looks like. It has the rickrack.
It's so
Isn't it cute? So yes.
I love that pink with
Do you
this
love
too.
it? So I tried to do, Ray helped me pick out my colors last week when I thought of this.
We had a lot of fun with that.
We did. And we just decided, we ended up doing solids.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh yes, a bag of clover clips. And so you just are going to go around and pin this. So if you haven't used clover clips, they're great for doing your binding. I've also used my favorite glue for binding.
Mm-hmm.
But just to give you a hint, clover clips you can see are flat on one side and curved on the other. So you want the flat side to always be on the bed of your machine when you're sewing, if you're going to sew with it.
So it doesn't distort anything, right?
Yes. And so, as you can see, now I'm up here. Now you have to let me know if we're good again. So, to do a miter, the back side you can see it's doing a little pretty miter.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, when I machine sew my binding, you are going to get a smaller binding, part of the binding on one side versus the other, and I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
If I made a bigger, more than 1/4 of an inch, it would be fine. I cut my binding strips at 2 3/8. Sometimes 2 1/4. It just depends. If it's 2 1/4, that usually means I'm hand sewing the binding to it. So whatever, when you're turning your binding, if this, you can see this side of the binding is on top.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is going to make sense, where this side is down. So when you're on this side, the side that was on the top over here is what's going down first.
Okay.
And then the
what's
other
going
side
underneath the other
there
side.
you go. And so I use a longer pin to hold this and then just come down. And look, there's a perfect miter.
Oh, that's pretty.
Isn't that pretty?
Yeah.
So you just need a perfect miter. Now I will tell you, I'm not the know-all of bindings. This is just how I was taught and how I do my bindings. So again, go to the next one, put some, more pins in. If you use a glue, use it lightly. You would do it at the ironing board so you could iron. I don't, when I do the miter part, I'm making sure that's in there. I just put glue here and a little bit to hold this down, but I don't go all the way up.
Okay.
Okay. And even if I machine bind, I still go and hand sew, especially on quilts. I may not do this on my pot holders. I'll go back and hand sew like 2 little applique stitches, right, to hold this side
To hold
and
the
the other
folded
side down.
bit. Okay.
But if you're doing, if you're doing a quilt, you should hand sew it. And the reason being is dirt and dust can get caught up in it, and it will help your quilt deteriorate even faster. Now you're thinking, oh, Kim, there's no dirt and dust in my house. Sweetie, there's dirt and dust in your house. Even if you cleaned
it, everywhere.
It's everywhere. Oops. And again, I'm just trimming off and just pinning this down. Now, if it feels like your miter just isn't doing what you want it to do, like there's too much fabric in that corner, you can easily just go and trim some of it out. Trim some of the batting out. Don't trim a lot, and I'm talking. You would laugh. It would just be just little bits and pieces. But believe it or not, that little corner, it's just like applique. And you're doing leaves, that little triangle piece, you would just be amazed as to what it can do. Now, if you wanted to, if you were just really a die-hard rickrack person, you could stick rickrack in here before you sew it down.
That'd be cute.
If you didn't do the rickrack pocket. But again, I just think it's a fun gift. And if you're okay, let me just say this: when we did this in the Modern Guild as a swap, we did. It was like improv piecing. Okay. So again, if you want to see if you like improving, this is a big,
Good
big
size.
enough square. Yeah. To get you started. Sorry, I should dump all these out. You could
do one block.
You could do one block. Or if you've made a quilt or started making a quilt and you don't like it, use it as a pot holder.
Good way to repurpose it.
Yeah. So, yes. If you know you'll never use that block in anything else. So there it is, Pen. I'm going to hand you that for a second. There you go.
You can white elephant someone and no one will ever know.
Hey, look, I got this off.
All right.
It was straight. Huh. So now I'm switching out my feet on my machine. I'm using the edging foot. And use the edging foot whenever you want to top stitch and you want it to be very pretty. I'm going to go back to my needle in the middle. And I know that, I'm going to put this down. I'm using white thread because I used white thread for my quilting. And I usually kind of will dictate, I might use a colored thread for on the top to match like the binding. But I want you to see what I'm doing. Plus, it'll be fine. It's a pot holder. But I usually have whatever the thread is that I quilted with in my bobbin. And the reason why is people won't know. You just have to shake that mouse. People won't know if they just look at your piece very quickly. They won't realize that they'll just think it's part of your quilting. That's what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to get started. I have to move my needle over because you can see my my fabric fold is right against my little black gauge, right against the gauge. But I need to move the needle over. There you go. And get it to start. Now, I know on mine, because I've done this a lot, I like 6.6, but it's whatever look that you like. When you're sewing this, you want to top stitch on the top and go into your quilt backing. You don't want to sew into the back of the binding. But if you do, it's no heartache, you know. So again, I'm going to get started, and I'm going to just move. And the other thing that I do is I will use a stiletto or my seam ripper, whatever you have available, and I'm going to hold this down until I get to the corner. And then I have to lean up because I'm not above my machine. And I will tell you, those of you who stitch like I am, where the machine is on top of the table, I don't know how you do it. Because my machine, I have it in a table, so it's all even and it's down.
Okay.
So again, don't know how people do it. Again, I just turned the corner. Now you see this clip is really in my way, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move it to hold on to here.
Okay, just moving it down a little bit.
I just move it down just a little bit, and then I finally take it off. And then again, the fold is going against the little guide. And when I get to this corner, again, and the reason why I'm using a stiletto or the seam ripper to hold the corner is it can go up into under that foot where you don't want your fingers to go under the machine needle, because you can sew over your fingers.
That would be not fun.
And it's not fun. I've known people who've done it. Oops. Okay, I got to tug just a little bit. I don't know why it's getting stuck on something there. Watch out for your that your foot doesn't flip over the brick rack.
Oh, yes.
I'm having a senior moment. Does that need it to be plugged in?
Yeah, it's done.
And it was charged overnight. So again, coming to that corner. Okay, still, again, ask your questions. If I'm confusing you, I don't mean to, but, if you ask, maybe it will help. And that one, it's folding that binding over just a little bit, so I just picked up my foot and brought it back down. And I'm stopping my needle in the down position, right in where the miters, are folded together. It stops right in there. So I know that when I pick up my foot, and yes, I do have where my machine would automatically up and down on the foot, but I chose not to on my binding because I like that the foot is helping to keep everything secure while it's down. Take the last one out, and you saw I trimmed my thread, and so when I'm up here, you can see the guide is just pushing my pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So I let it push until I can get enough underneath the foot, raise the foot up to run over it. Yes, and then I'm going to just meet back up. I go over about 3 stitches. I reverse a couple, and then I do a locking stitch, and then cut my thread.
All right.
And I have a pot holder.
A very cute pot holder.
A cute one with little nutcrackers. They're so cute. So I'm going to move this out of the way just a second because we don't know what we're doing. We don't know if we're still on the other one or not. Oh, we are. I think we're still doing. But I'm going to just show this down so you can see all 3 of my all 3, yes, pom-poms. I'm sure the pom-poms will be in the way with cooking, but it could just be cutesy. But I wanted to show you, remember we added solid fabric, and I wasn't planning on using all 3 solid fabrics on each thing. Can you see them? There you go. On each pot holder.
Mm-hmm.
But then I changed my mind last night. Yes, I waited and did this last night. And so anyway, I quilted, you know, I cut, I got 1/4 of a yard of each of my fabrics. And so I cut a square off of each of the fabrics and I quilted. Well, that's not true. Um, on the solids, I think I got 1/3 of a yard so that I could do one strip for binding. So I cut my binding off and then I just cut squares of, and then I had decided that I would, quilt a print piece with the solid piece. And as you can see on this side, you can really see how I did a grid. I just marked it with a pen with a marker that disappeared, and then on this one, I marked the one line from corner to corner, and I used my walking foot. My walking foot was used on all of these, and I just picked a stitch from my decorator stitches, and I just did this, diagonal, which I don't know if you can really see it on that side, but it's really pretty on this side. And so anyway, once I did the one, then I just used the edge of my foot to line up right on the outside of the bumps.
Okay.
So if you really look at any of these, sometimes I stayed on the line, sometimes I didn't. You see where I bounced off. But again, even if you were doing this in a quilt, the quilt police are not coming to get us.
No.
So yes.
We're all
So
human.
anyway, so we can go back to the big screen if you want.